So today we're going to talk about 7 blues licks that I think every guitar player should know. Let's get to it. Okay, today we're going to talk about 7 blues licks that I think every guitar player should know. The first lick we're going to look at is a 3-note lick, and you can do this with either the first and third finger or first and fourth finger. And simply what it is, if we're playing in D minor pentatonic, as the example we used earlier, you would take the third or the minor third of the second note that occurs in the minor pentatonic scale. So if we just run through the pentatonic scale quickly. Okay, so we're up here. We're going to take either our pinky or our ring finger and place it on the second note on the top here. So F, D, and then we'll go down to the 5th, A, like this. And the picking pattern is down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. Okay, what I do is with my index finger, it's sort of like a partial bar, but what we call as a roll. So I'm rolling back and forth between which note I'm playing. So for example, when I'm playing this note, I'm not quite able to make a note until I roll my finger down on the B string. And the same thing occurs here on the E string now. Or you can use your pinky. Now, what's cool about this lick is that you're giving just a little tiny bend on the third. That's sort of a tip, by the way, if you're just starting out with the blues. You want to make your phrasing, your playing sound a little more bluesy. Anywhere you have a third, you can do a partial bend. Not quite a full bend, you don't want to go. But just up to the next fret or in between those two frets. Really important, make sure that you don't accidentally release the bend like this. Okay, you want to push it up and sort of spring load the string to fall back. As soon as you take off, you're pulling back to the index finger and releasing all the tension from the bend on that string. Make sure it's in tune. It's a really common problem is to do this. And that's simply because you need to relax and let go the moment that you return to the 10th fret. So this is a great little lick to use over the first chord of the blues pattern, you can also use it over the fourth. Okay, so over the 1 chord and the 4 chord, this works because you're playing a note that harmonizes halfway between each. It doesn't quite harmonize perfectly because you're bending it, but it's splitting the difference. We're almost on an F sharp, which is in a D7 chord, and we're almost on an F natural, which is in a C. I'm sorry, which is in a G7 chord. So we're just about in between. So what I do is, when I'm playing the 1 chord, if I'm playing this lick over it, for example, I'm actually bending more or less right up to this F sharp. When I go to the 4 chord, it's just a very slight little modulation of the note. I'm not going full bore on that one. So you just kind of adjust it to what chord. You got to use your ears for that. You can use this lick elsewhere. So for example, if you want to do something similar to it, it doesn't have to be just right here on these strings. You can move it down an octave, down here. Okay, so all I did is I took this note here, the F, and I brought it down an octave. And the way to do that, from going from the E string downwards, you go down 2 strings to the G string, and down 1, 2, 3 frets, and just play the exact same shape. Okay. Another thing you can do with this lick is you can, over the 5 chord, simply move the F down to an E and do the same thing. You're going to bend up a semitone. So when we're going over the chord changes here, so if we're on 1, okay, we're on 4, when we're on 5, okay. So you can move that one around a bit. You could keep that going for an entire chorus if you'd like. Okay, so this next lick is more of a B.B. King type lick. What I'd like you to keep in mind with all of these examples is that feel free to move them around, start them on different beats. Elongate the rhythms on certain notes. Play with it. It's an improvisation, right? When you're playing the blues, so make it your own. The idea here, again, we're going to be using a partial bar or roll. It's a really common thing in the blues, so you might as well get used to it. And these are great examples of it. You're going to take your index finger and start on the 10th fret, okay, right here, playing an A, and you're going to roll just like that. Okay, if you can't quite do that, you can bar. Just keep in mind you're going to get some bleeding. Now, as soon as you have triggered the second note, you're going to do a little legato line here. You're going to go hammer on and pull off just like this. Make sure on your pull-offs you actually pull the string down. Okay, you don't want to just lift off. That's weak. Okay, once you've done this little figure here, you're going to take the same finger that did the hammer and pull legato line and plant it on the 12th fret. Okay, once you've got that, you're going to, without plucking the string again, you're going to slide up to the 15th fret. Okay, so in context, okay, so this next lick is a great lick to play over the 1 chord because it's simply just an arpeggio. So if we take a look at the basic shape of this, we have 12, 11, 10, and 10, and then 13. Those notes form a dominant chord, okay? So that's D7. Okay, so just taking those notes, what we're gonna do is when we get to the third, so the second note that occurs, we're gonna start on a minor third and hammer on as a grace note. Okay, this doesn't get its own time. It's just gonna be a little embellishment. Again, as you can see, another roll. Okay, blues full of rolls. Pretty straightforward lick. You can play this over all the chords, by the way. If you just transpose this, so here we're playing D, you gotta know your notes on the D string though, you gotta know your note names. So go down to G, the 4 chord. Okay. The 5 chord A. Okay. So pretty cool lick. You can try that out. It doesn't have to be on the same beats again that I've put there. You could do it on the end of 1, end of 2, end of 3, end of 4, whatever you like. Okay, the fourth lick. This is a Stevie Ray Vaughan type of lick. Works really well over all of the changes. Okay, when you hear people say, you know, this guitar player he plays over the changes really well. Usually, what they're talking about is they have a really good sense of the harmony and they know when to use an arpeggio over which chord. They're avoiding notes that clash with the chords and stuff. Well, this is a really easy way, a really good lick to get you started on how to incorporate a little bit of scale and arpeggio works together, so that, you know, you can be one of those guys that people say, man, he plays really well over changes. So if we take this example here, playing triplets in the beginning, just as we looked at prior to this, we were looking at a D7 arpeggio. Well, this is the same thing. We're playing an arpeggio again, the same arpeggio in fact. Okay. That's a little bit of a tricky part to learn. You got down, down, up, down, up, down. Okay, so you're going to want to practice that slowly if it's giving you troubles. Practice it really slowly. What I would suggest is first work on the first 3 notes, be able to do this quickly. Okay, then be able to get to the first 4 notes quickly. With the proper picking pattern, so down, down, up, down. Okay, once you get that, the next part's pretty easy to add in. Okay, so slowly. Okay, here's where things get really interesting. This is the Stevie Ray Vaughan sound. This is part of his style. What he does next, this 12 note, by the way, you're playing a major 9. That's out of the pentatonic scale that we were looking at earlier, but it works. It works really well. In the blues, it works well over the 1 chord, works well over the 5 chord. Instead of going back to a major 9, this note here, he does a little figure here where he goes down to a minor 9. So on its own, that note, you know, wouldn't sound so great. Not quite the note you'd want to hear. You'd probably be looking for, you know. Something like that. But this is just a quick little turnaround here, and this is just a bit of a tip here and aside. When you're playing something as a passing figure, it's not your main harmony. It's a little scale type run. It's okay to throw in some chromatic notes. In fact, it sounds awesome. Now you'll see that in this lick. Okay, you can do just like the B.B. King lick, you can do a hammer pull. Or sometimes I like to do this. I'll actually articulate, I believe it's the first two, I better check that. Yeah, so I'll articulate the first two and do a pull off. So it would be down, up, pull, down, up. So the 13 and 10 still remain a down and an up. You can also slide into this, by the way, as a grace note. So say we're coming from the 4 chord. Okay, so as you've seen, I went through all the chords. Again, you got to know your note names and where the chords are. If you know this basic shape, which is just the second half of your bar chord, you can run through these quite easily. All right, the 5th lick we're going to look at. This is sort of a George Benson type lick. This involves some double stops. So double stops is simply, string player lingo. Violin players would refer to playing 2 notes at once as double stops. It's a bit of a challenge on that instrument. It's really not a challenge on the electric guitar in comparison. But when we're talking about lead lines, like melody lines, just like a violin tends to play, we refer to them as double stops. So what we're going to do here is we're gonna set ourselves up with our index finger doing a partial bar on the G string on 13 and on the B string on 13, okay? Just like that. And what we'll do is we'll take this finger, our middle finger, and hammer once we've played down to the 14th fret. So you have to make sure you really have a locked out last digit on your index finger, and that this hand is well rounded. Okay, you're attacking on the fingertip. If you're back like this, you'll have a really hard time. So make sure that you've got this part of your hand so that your hand's flat across the bottom. I like to imagine there's a tangent going across a semicircle here. It would be sort of flat right across. And what we have is this. Sort of a George Benson type lick. Again, the rhythms, they don't have to be exactly what I have here, but what I've got is 1. Well, I added in a note actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And what I'm doing is I'm articulating down with my pick, and down again. You can either do a full hammer pull, or you can pick the 13th and pull off to the 12. And you can even hammer that 15, even though you haven't excited the string, if you just hit it hard enough. Or you can do a downstroke on it, either or. So you can use this one across chords as well. So if we're playing on the 1 chord, that works quite well. If we were playing on the 4 chord, I would just transpose it. The 6th lick we'll look at, this is really common in the rock and roll type era, Chuck Berry type sound guitar playing, but it came from blues players who were already doing it. You'll find, by the way, that the triplets are in abundance in blues music, as you've probably seen already in some of these examples. This sort of feel it all stems from swing time itself. The swing time is based off of a triple feel. So, if you're ever looking for something that doesn't sound so square, start playing some triplets. Now, what we're going to do here, we're going to, using the pentatonic scale again. Okay, starting on the G string with our ring finger on the 12th fret. Without any bends, this is the figure. Okay, so 12th fret with the ring finger, 10th fret with the index, and then I'm using my pinky up on the 13th fret. The picking pattern is down, down, up. It's an important picking pattern, so do take note of it. Some guys like to economy pick the first two, so what that means is they play right through as if it was one motion. Which is fine. I'm not going to tell you which one to do without seeing you play. Other guys will do 2 full strokes. Either one works. You can get quite efficient at each. So you're going to bend that 12th fret. Make sure you don't release it before you go to the next note. You don't want to go. Okay, it's going to sound pretty funny. You want to actually just move straight from that final pitch right to the next note. You could just practice that much even. Okay, that's one version of it. You can play it in many different ways. I could just simply change this note to the 12th fret. Okay, I can also go up to the E string, as you can see in the second example. Again, you're going to have to get used to that roll. Don't mind it too much if it does bleed. It sort of sounds okay doing that actually. A little bit of bleed there is fine between the strings. The last lick we'll look at, this is a great lick to throw in your turnaround, so on the 5 chord. This also can be played on other chords though, so it's not only a turnaround chord, turnaround figure, but it works well there. It's a really simple one. All you're going to do is do a partial bar, double stop again on 12 and 12 with your ring finger. Make sure it's flattened out enough you're getting both of them easily. You also don't want your fingers back like this angle backwards. You want them straight up. Okay? And now you're going to do 11, 12, 12. Okay, another roll. Different this time. Now what you're going to do, now remember what I said on the last lick, that when you have a major third, in this instance, the second note, we can play the minor third as a grace note and hammer, slide, whatever, bend into the next note. Okay, it's a really common bluesy type thing. These little chromatic alterations. So if we were on the turnaround, okay, we can use this, we can transpose it down to the 4 chord. Anywhere you would like. So there you have it. 7 great licks you can use in the blues style over a 12-bar blues and even other forms of blues. The next step would be to go out and try these over different keys, okay? Try it in G, try it in B flat, try it in E flat, try it in E. All the keys, all 12 of them. And, maybe you can modify these slightly to become your own, and you can do that either rhythmically or melodically. So good luck, and tune in for the next top licks that every guitar player should know.